Oh my gosh. Tell Dan to quit texting everybody. Ugh. Recording. All right. Wait. Oh, I gotta change the audio. Yes, thank you. I got that. I seriously think I'm ready. Oh man, one of those days. All right, here we go. Shh. Dare to dream. You are listening to the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast, episode 248.
Welcome to Season 6, Episode 248 of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast. Today is June the 26th, 2016. I'm Matthew Dean Furlo, and celebrating his independence from oppressive overlords is my brother James Furlo.
So that's right. Dare to dream. That's all I'll say about that.
That's pretty awesome. Well, so this can go so many ways. Are we not going silently into that good night? Will we not give up without a fight? We will live on. Have you seen the new? We'll go in order of importance. We'll start at the top. Did you see the new Independence Day movie?
Yes, I did.
Oh, is it awesome?
It's not as good as the first one.
Oh, is there a good speech somewhere in there?
Not to say that it's bad. It's not as good. I mean, the first one's amazing, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to like, I liked it, you know? I'm not sure if I'm ever going to buy it type of thing.
Okay.
There was a few things where you were like, tried a little hard there, but you know, there's aliens involved in it. Spoiler.
Dang it.
So the premise is, I'm trying to remember what you can pick up from the trailer, but you know, it's like 20 years later.
Yeah.
And
aliens return to be angry again.
Yeah, and we've integrated a bunch of their technology, so it's kind of a future sci-fi flick.
Yeah, which I like the idea of.
Yeah, they forget about like the human emotion side of it, but which I feel like they captured really well in the first movie.
Yeah, I feel like that's all they did really well in the first movie, which is
there you go, expectation set.
Bummer.
I know. That was my from a sci-fi cool technology standpoint, awesome.
Yeah.
And
and a movie that doesn't even cross its production budget on its opening weekend is a doomed movie, especially one that's a summer blockbuster like that. That's unfortunate. I'm still going to go see it though. Oh yeah, for sure.
Go support them next weekend. That seems appropriate.
Like I've said, yes, exactly. Like I've said, I mean, this is mostly an excuse to have to rewatch Independence Day yet again because I love that movie.
I would say, if you haven't seen the first one, that's important. You know, like there's some movies where it's like, don't worry about it, you can figure it out. No, like the movie is twice as good if you've seen the original.
Okay, well, I've seen the original. I saw the original 5 times, maybe it was only 3, but like at least 3 times while in theaters. So am I okay?
Yeah, though that was a while ago.
And say I own it in multiple formats, including having it presently downloaded on my phone. I mean, I'm locked and loaded.
I think you're covered. For people listening who are like, maybe go watch the original. A, it's better, so watch a good movie, and then B, it will make the second one better as well.
Gotcha. Okay, I love that movie. I don't even know why.
I know it's great.
Is it? I'm conflicted with that every once in a while. Where I'm like, is this actually a good movie, or is it just? Is there some part of me that it like?
Look, you gotta remember, you gotta contextualize it, right? Like
Okay, yeah,
when it came out,
yeah,
like the attacks on the cities,
that's
that
true.
was
They
mind
were, yeah.
blowing.
Because I was like at the perfect age for it too, and I think that helps is that I was like 14 and it was a PG-13 movie. So this is like one of the first movies. Our parents were pretty not super strict, but they were like pretty cautious about you couldn't go to any, they were very picky about which PG-13 movies I got to go see before I was 13. So this was like one that was like I was allowed to go to. I could go as many times as I wanted. I just had to find the money to do it. And yeah, I loved it. And like you said, I mean, it was just mind-blowing special effects at the time. It was a good mix of CGI and practical effects, which meant that as somebody who's interested in technology and visual arts and stuff like me, it was, it was perfect. And like you said, there's a remarkable amount of authentic human emotion in the first movie.
Well, I mean, I like it because they take the time to build up the emotion.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what makes a good movie like that is you got to dive into the human side of it, and it can't just be what was the one I'm thinking, like San Andreas or something, where it's like, yeah, we're following one guy and he just always seems to be barely surviving and making it while everyone else around him is dying, and yet somehow this superhero is like doesn't get touched, and I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for.
Right.
And no, I think it's good, but yeah, it's worth checking out.
Right. It's a great movie for kind of Edge of Tomorrow is a really good movie. Why are we talking about this? So in other news, I'm so far off the rails. In other independence news, so are you pro exiting or pro staying? Are you?
Well, I think the guy who gave the victory speech, whatever his name is, that was amazing. I felt like I was listening to a modern day William Wallace.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Now, granted, I get the radio show that I was listening to, that you probably listened to as well. They cut it so that it flowed really well.
Yeah.
They got rid of all the applause in between and some of the other stuff that didn't matter. But man, when you cut it right, like a movie director should, dude, you're motivated. You're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't really care. It sounds like it's going to be a massive pain to try to pull off. I was just Jesse was like, what's the big deal? I was like, remember like the HP split that happened? Like, imagine that times 100.
Yeah.
Is kind of what's happening here.
Yeah.
Like, assuming it actually happens, right? That's kind of like, it's an advisory poll apparently, and who knows? But when you have the main prime minister, that's the other thing. I was like, imagine that Meg Whitman, like when we announced that we were splitting, said, "Oh yeah, and I'm quitting. Good luck." Like,
well, and honestly,
essentially what just happened.
It's not quite like this because it's hard. Yeah, you're right. It's not quite like this because it's a little bit crazy, but it'd be like it wouldn't be entirely unlike California saying, you know what, we're tired of this whole United States thing. We're going to secede.
Right?
Our governor deciding to step down as a result because he went, well, this is nuts. And the United States is going, wait, don't we have some say in this? Like, you guys can't just leave like that. It's complicated.
Yeah. Talk about a drama, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's fun stuff. So it's good. I look forward just from like you said, from the political drama of it perspective. I'm pretty excited, and I'm supposed to go to England not next week, but the week after. So I will get to talk with people front and center, hopefully. Of course, last time I was supposed to go to England a month and a half ago, I literally had my tickets bought and then didn't go. So I might not be going again. We'll see.
I gotcha.
But yeah. Okay, and then I guess we will follow the true Independence Day stuff next week. For our
I guess
regular, sure. We'll reconvene.
We like to be slightly behind current events, so
July. Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. July 3rd. So, yeah. Without further ado, this is. I want to bring it up, but I don't want to talk about it.
What?
We're gonna move on.
What?
We'll talk.
You can't do that.
There will come a day when I will be able to talk about the Warriors again, but today is not that day.
Wait, talk about the what again?
The Warriors.
Yeah. Well,
just sadness. Yeah. I did get to sit poolside at a bar where I wasn't paying for any of the beer, next to an ocean, like literally on the beach. I had the beach on one side and a pool on the other, and so it was like couldn't have been a more beautiful setting to be really sad and angry.
I at the first time that I had that experience where it was like someone was like, "Oh, and we'll get a pool right next to the beach." This was in Indonesia. I was like, "That's the dumbest thing ever. Why would you want two bodies of water next to each other?" Turns out that's awesome.
Oh, it's the best.
I didn't realize it.
Yeah,
that's pretty sweet setup. I love the idea now that I've experienced it.
You get all the beauty and grandeur of the ocean without any of the unpleasantness of the salt water.
Totally.
It's great.
It's amazing.
Yes, and it was good. It was good times. It was fun. It was actually a great week, but I'm back.
Well, we're glad that you're back.
To go to work tomorrow.
We got some stuff to talk about.
I know. I'm excited. So this week, man, I say we do it. I say we just get down to business and talk this week, like every week, about technology and the continuing corporate opera. And by that, I mean the soap opera of corporations' dealings back and forth, the people working for them, their marketing campaigns, and of course, the technology they're developing. But before we get into the heart of the show, James has got a short disclosure he wants to throw our way.
Yeah, I am one of the people working for them. Specifically, I founded and work for HPI, but I do not represent HP or any of HP's opinions during this podcast. I also am a partial owner of Twitter, Etsy, and Lending Club.
Nice. My disclosure is that I think this is still true, but it won't be true for much longer. I am an investor in Skull Candy. Skull Candy exists as an independent company anymore. We'll talk about that in a second, though.
Okay.
So, but yes, I own a share, and yeah. But if you wanna follow us on the internet, I was expecting to be constantly doing pictures and stuff on Instagram and Facebook. I didn't take any pictures. I don't know what happened. I just I left my phone behind the vast majority of the time. Yeah, it was just great, kind of liberating to just be chilling with my watch, and makes me which I was like, I'm even more sold on the no phone way of life, but yeah, it was, so I didn't take any pictures as a result. But I'm back to the real world where I constantly am surfing the internet on my phone. So if you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, you can go check it out. My Twitter is @MatthewDFurlo. My Instagram is nextwiggin4, NEXTWIGGIN, and then number 4.
I am jamesfurlo.com, which I just did a new blog post.
Ooh.
And at Twitter and other places.
Awesome. If you want to get more about the show, like all the articles we're going to talk about today, you can go to furlobros.com. Not just that's there, though. There's so much more, including a link to the podcast, a link to the YouTube video, our Patreon stuff where you can support the show, and where we will appreciate it a lot. Other stuff. Oh, the link to the... if you want the show notes delivered directly to your email inbox, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. And yeah, it's there for your convenience. Have fun. Check it out, faithful listeners. But yeah, so right down to the business. Incipio? Inki Pollo. INCIPIO. They just bought they're buying Skull Candy to expand their accessory empire.
Ooh, how's that make you feel?
Fine. Skull Candy's always been a company that's sort of underperformed in my assessment. One of the first nice pair of headphones I ever bought was a pair of Skull Candies. There's so many different trajectories to the truth of my life right now. So I'm currently wearing Skull Candy earbuds, but every week, I'm sure you've noticed, I had the over the ears gold and leather ones. While I was in Mexico, I always travel with them because I have these and they started to malfunction, coming only through one ear, and I'm like, oh no. So
Oh man.
yeah, so I got to figure that out. I think it's fixable actually, but I like the headphones, so I might actually go through the process. But anyways, the company, yeah, they've always seemed to me to be they kind of fell into the niche of their top goal was fashion and affordability,
Oh, okay.
and which audiophiles out there are going to be like, that's pretty much what Beats strategy was. So why did Beats become what Beats is? It's this multinational corporation that went from $3 billion to Apple, where Skull Candy's going for $177 million.
Yeah, slightly different.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always liked I've always liked the brand. I like their hardware, but I just want to bring it up. But yeah, we'll see. I guess supposedly the brand's going to stay intact, and they'll continue to build all of their different audio hardware. It's one of those things where Incipio just wants to, like I said, expand.
I have an Incipio iPhone case.
Oh yeah, nice.
They make a really thin feather light one. I really like it.
That's awesome.
So there you go.
We'll see. Hopefully this means just getting more engineering, and hopefully that means it'll get more attention, and it'll continue to to grow. Because, like I said, I think it's a good brand, and I think I like their style. I also have their, yeah. I bought their stock. I've bought so much of their their hardware. So it's good company. Hopefully things work out.
All right. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit on you.
Okay.
So I read this article. It was pretty interesting. It was talking about trailers in the age of internet video. So my best friend, who doesn't know it, is MG Siegler. We've talked about him before.
Mm-hmm.
He could probably be your best friend too. Did you know that he used to have a website that was predicated around movie trailer reviews, affectionately called Trashing Trailers?
No.
He used to do that for fun. Now, what he does is he writes movie reviews in haiku format. So it's called Review in Haiku.
It's pretty awesome.
Like I said, he and I are best friends. He just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, so he wrote this post, and it's this idea of trailers in the age of internet video. And so, it's funny where, I don't know about you, but dude, it's just fun to watch movie trailers on YouTube.
Are you kidding me? You don't know about me? There's nothing I love more than movie trailers. We went to a movie, I can't remember which movie it was, but it was like Star Wars or something like that. It was some giant big movie, and there's a bit of a hiccup, and the manager came in and said, "Hey, we got a bit of a hiccup. We can start the movie without the trailers, or we can just go with the trailers. What do people want?" He's like yelling this to the crowd, and the small vocal group of people who dislike trailers, that I don't like them. They're not my friends. I don't know how to communicate with them. They yelled really loud and quickly, and the guy goes, "Okay, we'll go with the trailers." And I was just sitting there stunned, like, this is one of the biggest movie releases of the year. The big trailers that they spend tons of money and energy on cutting are going to be on this movie. Like, what are you people doing? I don't know.
Okay, so you're into it, which is interesting because it's really just a form of a commercial, right?
I know. Yeah.
But commercials we all love, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, so his thought was to say, there's some things where it's like, how do you want to say it? Like, there's some things where, like with video on the internet, we have such a short attention spans where even with some videos, it would be nice to have a trailer telling me what it is I'm about to watch. Okay. Because, investing 3 minutes might be a lot. And so if you could just take 6 seconds to figure out to get the gist of it, then you could decide to watch the whole thing if you wanted to. Okay. This is kind of what's happening with Vine, which, by the way, he was a seed investor in Vine before it got bought by Twitter.
All right.
He also was a seed investor in Periscope before it got bought by Twitter. And he's like, dang, Twitter, quit stealing my millions. That's kind of awesome. Anyways, so what Vine is now doing is, in addition to their 6-second video, which they launched like forever ago, they are now allowing people to essentially attach a 140-second video to that 6-second video. So you watch the 6 seconds, and if you wanted to, you could say, "Oh, let me watch the quote full thing."
Another minute and 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. So so it's kind of like a trailer for an internet video.
That's so weird. I'm not sure if I really like it or really hate it. You know what would be
You'll
really,
love it. Just admit it.
You know what I think would be.
Do you visit Vine anymore?
I not much. I will watch Vines anytime they come up, but I like when Vine first came out for the first couple of months. I got into a couple of comedians, and I would just spend hours watching, not hours, but minutes watching Vine's videos. And so I don't follow it as religiously, but there's a couple that I you see them often enough. They're pretty good. But I kind of like this idea.
A lot of them make them in the Twitter moments, which is nice.
That's true. The one thing that I actually could see this really taking off for is and you could do this on a YouTube video, but really pleasing your clickbaity type people, where you go, top 10 movie or top 6 movies that have a twist ending. And you just list the 6. You list the 6 movies, and then or you list the 5 movies, and then you top 6 through 2. And then that way it's like, okay, I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. I know where this thing's going, and then they can go in and kind of like do their description of it and their breakdown of it. I actually think that would be a pretty interesting video format. And yeah,
okay.
I feel like that's a really good idea that we just gave away. Yeah, so that's always one of my big complaints. Is it's like a lot of times I just want to know that, like, a lot of times it's not that I don't want to know the list, but it's just make it digestible. Make this as digestible as possible. And with videos, a lot of times because it's it's tempoed, like it's hard to like jump around and stuff. It'd be nice for them to just, okay, give me the list and then tell me what I'm going to watch so that I can decide if this is stupid or not before I get going.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, Vine is, you can now attach 140 seconds. It's getting a little bit of love.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I actually like that a lot. Oh man, the more I think about this, more like you basically are dropping the narrative hook. You can do a narrative hook, and then this is a good idea. MG Siegler, we should hang out. Have your people talk to our people.
Yeah,
by our people we mean James or I. Just tweet at us or something. So it's sort of become a thing that we have like we've started to have a weekly virtual reality segment, and I don't necessarily do it on purpose. I just every week I find something I'm really excited about, and so this week's installment of our virtual reality segment comes to you with my first actual opportunity to try out the PlayStation.
Whoa!
Yeah,
what'd you think?
A little setup. So during E3, they announced that they were having they were going to start doing roaming demos and stuff. And
that's right.
And so turns out that there's a couple of locations near me that they do these roaming demos, and one in particular actually had an event today. And so I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. And drove down to the Best Buy, and they had this little corner shack, like kind of tucked away, and not a shack, but it's like corner tucked away with what are those called? Where they have like big
Sheets,
movable walls.
blankets,
There we go.
oh,
Like
partition.
yeah, sheets and partitions and stuff. And so it was all kind of closed off, which I'm not exactly sure why they would do that. I'm not sure if they were supposed to do that. I feel like you'd really want everybody to be able to quickly see what's going on over
like,
in this corner.
VR over here, come check it out.
Yeah, exactly, especially because everybody like that's doing it looks like an idiot while you're doing it. It's the goofiest thing to watch. It's like people reach out into space and see what's going on. So I'm kind of trying to set my expectations low. I actually have an appointment to try out the Oculus VR tomorrow, which I'm pretty stoked about. So I'll have to report back next week on that one. But this one, like,
dude, you're getting out there. I love it.
I know. So this one, it turns out the expectation is it's not super high resolution. So just bear that in mind. And so I'm like, okay, I'll try not to get my hopes up too much. So you go in, sit down, and the girl there, she's like, what do you want? What are you interested in? Are you interested in doing
zombies?
Yeah, right. Are you interested in doing a game? Are you interested in doing like one of your seated experiences where you're just sort of like you're going on a tour? And I was like, game, obviously.
Yeah.
And she was like, I was like, what games do you have? She goes, well, we have Battlezone, Battlezone. That's when I first saw the videos when I first saw the teaser trailer for it, I got so excited for it. For those who don't know, Battlezone's like this old school. It was one of your first like 3D tank games, where you would drive around in a tank shooting at things. Yeah. So this is a modern version of that. And where you're in a little tank and you get to drive around and shoot your tank around.
Oh, fun.
Basically, your controller controls the tank like any modern video game, where one controller controls where you're majorly pointing, like where the front of your vehicle is and where your cannon's pointing. One controller controls whether you're going left, right, forward, backwards as a base, and then your head gets to look around on its own. And it's so much fun. So you start off, you put it in, and it does the same trick that the HTC Vive does, where the controller actually shows up is tracked as well, so it shows up in the world, and it starts off and it's almost a little claustrophobic because you're inside this like small capsule, and little lights turn on and all sorts of stuff are coming on. And then all of a sudden, all these blast shields open up, and you can kind of see that you're in this little area, and they move you through. And then I remember I looked up and just got the sense of this like vastly huge complex that I'm in. And you go up into this like big complex, and then they shoot you out in the real world, and you start shooting at all these tanks. And it's like just fun because I sat there very fixed headed at first, like I was playing a video game. And kept like reminding myself, no, I can shoot straight, I can strafe left, and I can look right. I can get really complicated. Be aware of your surroundings, sort of thing. So I'm just trying to play and having a good time and kind of moving around. And then all of a sudden they like the tanks go away, and these giant gun pillars start shooting down on you, and you get like this real sense of, oh my gosh, they're these other things coming at you from this different plane that you weren't even thinking about before. And if you've ever played tank style games, like everything tends to stay very on the same plane, and then and you're not forced to have to look around really quickly, because just the mechanics of the game, in order to have it be stable, that's really hard. So whereas this one, all of a sudden there's planes over top of you and stuff, and it's just like, and you're looking around and you're trying to like see, like keep track of everything. And I don't know, it felt big, and it felt huge, and I was like, I don't know, it was just a ton of fun to play it. Like shortcomings, the resolution's pretty low, graphics are pretty low end.
Okay.
And so it's sort of like it's not quite this bad, but if you set your expectations here, it's a good place to start. But it's kind of like playing the PlayStation 3 on a 480p TV. or a 720.
Okay,
It's
that's not
relatively
horrible.
low. Exactly. It's relatively low resolution. It's relatively low end graphics, but at that level, it looks good. It's fun. It
Yeah,
looks stylized. And
yeah, we're not talking NES.
exactly.
Yeah, or
And
Nintendo Wii
so
for that matter.
exactly. And so I was really pleased by it. I'm really looking forward to. I was probably gonna dive in and get one. The one thing that one of the other things that I'm really looking forward to is to be able to do watch movies and stuff in VR, so you can get the big screen experience, as it were. And I'm a little bit hesitant. It'll be interesting to see how much fun that is because the resolution's so low. Where it'll be like watching, yeah, it'll be a gigantic screen, but it'll be low resolution.
Yeah, a
um,
gigantic 480p.
exactly. So but just as a first pass, everybody who keeps talking about how oh, I don't know if VR is really going to cap me and what's going on, I just think I go, it's to me, I look at and there are parallels drawn to the Wii, where they had a couple of games, but the whole motion controller thing never really took off. Like controlling with your Wii remote, except for a couple of games, just having a controller really stayed as the primary form of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, which focused on gameplay with a controller pad as opposed to motion control, succeeded long term. And there's these concerns that, well, maybe nobody will this will take off and it'll be like the Wii. I'm like, it feels completely different, especially if you, instead of thinking of PlayStation or as these VR things, instead of thinking them as another gimmick, they're really evolutions, I think, of the Wii's motion controls in a lot of ways, especially because motion controlling is such an integral part of this. I don't know. I'm more optimistic than I ever was. It was a ton of fun. I'm
That's
very excited
impressive.
about getting some games. So I know, right? I thought you were at 100% already. I didn't know you had anywhere to go. So, like I said, next week I'll get back to you on the Oculus VR. I'm gonna have to fly down to LA to do the HTC Vive. So
When are you doing that?
Yeah, right. We'll wait until they expand to a couple of more
Did
locations.
you get a job?
Yeah, right. I have a
Okay.
friend. I have a friend that lives lives like an hour and a half from me that has one. So I might have to just go on a journey one of these weekends to try the HTC. But all in all, it's awesome. The future. It's coming. El futuro.
Excellent.
I spent a week in Mexico, I think, in Spanish.
Dude, very cool. Well, that is the future, but we are here today.
Yes.
And there are a few trends that are happening real-ish time.
Okay, that's cool.
So we're going to talk about it. Specifically, we're going to talk about thinness. Thin is the new awesome. Okay?
It is.
I'm pretty certain the Wall Street Journal here is going to have a cow when I try to scroll. Is that the one that doesn't like it?
Wired's the one that the Wall Street Journal, if it opens, you're good. If you get the paywall, you're in trouble.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm good there. All right. So, Wall Street Journal, they wrote an article comparing the MacBook versus the HP Spectre. Fun, or just like friendly reminder? Not fun, friendly. Could be fun, I guess. I work right. And it's this HP, not the other.
Gotcha. That was a fun reminder.
Yeah, there you go. So anyways, it's comparing the two of them, and it says, how thin does your laptop really need to be? So it turns out that the Spectre is 0.4 millimeters thick, whereas the MacBook...
No, that cannot possibly be true.
0.04?
If it were 4 millimeters thick,
HP says the 0.4 inch thick.
Jeez, okay, thank you. Millimeters are small to begin with. Less than a millimeter is really small.
Sorry. It's a millimeter thinner than the MacBook.
That sounds...
0.1 inches thinner.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Are we in the realm? Okay. Anyways, they're both thin. HP's is a little bit thinner, but not by
Ooh.
much. So, in order to do this, though, they made some compromises, like normal. Battery life being one of them.
Of course.
The MacBook has 8 hours 40 minutes. HP's has 6.5 hours.
That is a huge gap. When you're
So for comparison purposes, the MacBook Air is 11 hours, and the Dell XPS 13 is 10 hours 40 minutes. Call it 11 hours. So
it can't go a work day, but it can't. It's the one that you'd most want to take on an international flight because it's so light, but it can't actually survive the international flight worth of use.
yeah,
Okay,
that's true. Let's see here. The MacBook weighs 2.03 pounds. HP's is 2.4. So it's 0.4 pounds more. Now, interestingly enough, the MacBook screen size is 12 inches with a 23 by 114, awesomeness display.
Tons.
Whereas the Spectre is 13.3 inches, so bigger but smaller pixel density. And then finally, the MacBook has one USB Type-C.
Oh.
That's it. Plus a headphone jack.
Yes.
We'll talk about that later. And then the Spectre has 3 USB Type-Cs, including 2 Thunderbolt compatible ones and a headphone jack.
That's a lot more ports.
They also have special keyboards to make them, thin as thin can be, things like that. So all that to say, they're both very, very thin. They're both reasonably priced for high-end laptops. Their battery life not as good as it has been in the past. And They got rid of a bunch of ports. And so the question is, have we reached a point where, okay, we're good to go? Like, no need to make them any thinner or anything. Like, I'd rather have 11-hour battery life. And that's the other thing. Sorry. Oh my gosh, this so isn't fair that I don't do this. The MacBook has a Core M processor, whereas the Spectre has what is it? It's the i5 and
you can get the
3, maybe i7. I don't remember. i5 and i7.
Right.
So it's it can actually. When you're browsing a web, who cares? They're the same. When you're doing Photoshop, Spectre is a lot better.
Well, yeah, and I think the other big thing there is
battery life is a lot lower.
I was going to say that's the real hit to your battery life. I got to believe is that you're talking about an actual processor. It's funny in today's day and age, like unless you get It's interesting. It's interesting to see what kind of limitations, what sort of a use case you would need the i5 or the i7. Why would you need an i7 for one of these things? That because that is a beast of a processor, and it really falls flat without enough RAM and a graphics card to pair it with.
Yeah,
so,
which I don't know about that.
Yeah. These. The i5 has a pretty good built-in graphics cores, much better than the Core M. So from a graphics performance perspective, I could see the i5 over the Core M, but getting an i7 seems just, what are you doing? Just get the laptop you want. And
by the way, the last thing is the MacBook starts at $1,300, whereas the Spectre starts at $1,200.
Okay, so similar.
Like I said, they're in $1,000 range if you get the low end, bottom range stuff. So again, it's this idea of, because HP's made a big deal, like world's thinnest laptop. This thing's awesome. I think I shared the story of what the CEO did, where he started out with a big, thick one and then said, make it thinner. Then they did, and then he said, make it thinner. Then they did, and then he was like, again, make it thinner.
Yeah.
And so here they are, super, super thin. And you can only imagine it's like, so the question again is like, are we competing on the right things here?
You know, it's weird. I can't. I could go back and forth on this because I see where people come from, especially in the iPhones, where there's not a lot of different options for, like there's basically two different phones. And so if they get super thin and the battery life gets super short, everybody goes, why don't you just, what if I want more battery life? Why don't you make it a little bit bigger and have the battery last a little bit longer? I can almost understand that argument, but on these laptops, especially these ultra portables, it's like, yeah, just make it as thin as possible. Because if somebody cares more about battery life or power, they'll go and buy one of the bigger computers. This is an ultra portable. Like its primary thing is its small size. And really and truly, in my opinion, all they are is tablets with keyboards built in and hinges. They're these devices they really leverage what we're learning about how to build and manufacture tablets and build good ones and build high-end ones. And as you see tablets really go for thinness, which is a primary goal there, you'll see computers do that as well. And I don't know, I kind of like it. Because I just think it comes down to what are you doing with your computer. And especially with these ultra portables, where they are primarily designed for commuters who are going to be doing a lot of travel. They don't want to have to carry around a big laptop. They don't really need anything more than access to the internet, word processing.
Why not have a tablet then?
What?
Oh, the word processing. Okay, you answered my question.
Yeah, exactly. The built-in keyboard. It's writers. Why, if your primary job was writing, would you have anything? No matter what type of writing it is, whether you're writing screenplays, novels, or blog posts, why would you want anything other than one of these sorts of devices? And I would actually argue that even as a tech guy, like one of these computers would be awesome for programming, just because as long as you're not doing a really big build, they're great for just kind of taking it with you and working on apps on the go. And like I said, because they're internet connected, if you really need to build a big app, well, then you almost certainly don't have this as your single computer. Like if I got one, I could do remote control my home computer, which actually could build a big app in a short period of time and deploy it and try that out. So it's I get the goal here, and where the complaint against thinness, I think, kind of makes sense with phones, where it's like we don't have a lot of options necessarily, especially if you're in the Apple ecosystem. But HP, how many different types of computers does HP have?
That's true.
Whether they're
more than two.
Exactly. Whether they're gaming laptops that are tanks with their own separate graphics card, or this. I kind of like it. Make it as thin as possible. Make it so that like if you breathe on it, it bends and breaks. Let's get crazy. I read somewhere that just today that one of Johnny Ives' goals is he wants the end goal for the iPhone is that it feels like a piece of glass in your hand.
Well, being that he's in charge, I think that will happen.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like that's the direction we're going. So,
which I think transitions really nicely to the next set of articles, which is all related. So rumors are, and we purposely did not talk about this last week, but it's getting some steam, so I think we have to address it.
Okay.
Rumors are they're going to get rid of the headphone jack in the new iPhone.
Yeah.
Was it Samsung or LG, or they're all the same?
Huawei did it.
Thank you. They already came out with a phone without the headphone jack.
Yeah.
So Nilay Patel, he came out with an article. That was titled "Taking the Headphone Jack Off of Phones is User Hostile and Stupid. Have some dignity." And it was a pretty entertaining piece. He goes, "We're so out of ideas that actively making them worse and more user hostile is the only innovation left." So he goes on to make the argument that digital audio means we're going to have DRM audio, which apparently there's some sort of analog loophole thing that headphone jacks have. And if you go all digital, that loophole's gone, I guess. He says also number two, wireless headphones and speakers are fine, but they're not great, and that's essentially what we would be having. And so he's like, I don't want fine, I want great. There you go. His next one, which I think is true, dongles are stupid, especially when they require other dongles. And he's just like, he shows a picture of his friend who's got the MacBook, and it's the whatever that has the USB Type C, which then has a dongle converted to a regular USB, which is then plugged into a USB hub, which then has two things plugged into it: charging his phone, and I don't know what the other one is, probably a camera or something or other. He's just like, seriously, come on, we make these laptops so thin there's only one port, which again, I think your answer is he should have bought a MacBook Pro. Right. But whatever. Yeah. So he's sitting there saying like, this is bad, and we're going to do this for phones now. Number four, it's ditching a deeply established standard and will disproportionately impact accessibility. He says the traditional headphone jack is a standard for a reason. It works. It works so well that there's an entire ecosystem around it. And he's like, come on. And then number five, which I think is kind of a weird argument, he says making Android and iPhone headphones incompatible is so incredibly arrogant and stupid. There's not even explanatory text under this one. He's just saying, come on, guys, don't be mean. And then number six, which I think is interesting, no one is asking for this. So that's essentially his thing. And the article that I ignored last week was saying something very similar. Like, nobody wants this. There's an entire ecosystem for it. No one's prepared for the switch. Though at the end, it did kind of leave it with the not now. It should happen, but not now. And I just went, oh, really? Okay. You just kind of undermined yourself there.
Yeah.
And he's not saying not now. He's saying not ever, though does concede that like maybe in the future. And so to kind of further tee it up, John Gruber, Apple fanboy extraordinaire.
Yeah.
It's hard to find a bigger fanboy than this guy. He took Delay's post and was like, all right, let's talk about this. And essentially he makes the argument, headphone jacks are the new floppy drives. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And so for his, like, again, argument number one, digital audio means DRM. He's like, what are you talking about with the analog loophole? Like, I haven't heard that, and I have Apple Music, so I don't care.
Yeah.
All right. Feels good. He says, more importantly from Apple's, and like, again, he's like, all
Well, I think we're still live. So I should probably say this out loud. But it looks as though James's computer's completely offline for some reason. So we will get back to you after this brief commercial break, I suppose. I'm gonna goof on Reddit in the interim. So sorry about this. Oh, hey. Welcome back to the live broadcast of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast.
I don't know why, but my computer disconnected from the internet.
Oh, that's annoying.
Everything else was working. I just turned Wi-Fi back on and off, and it worked. All right. So, anyways, where did you last?
I believe where we left off was you were saying that you're talking about Grouper Fireball.
And yeah. Do you remember what I last said about it?
I'm trying to remember.
Did I talk about digital audio and what Apple really cares about?
DRM. You were saying the last thing I remember you saying was DRM and how like what's this analog loophole he's talking about?
Yeah. So okay, so digital, Patel is like digital audio means DRM, and so Gruber is like, I don't know what this loophole is that you're talking about, but you're missing the point, dude. It's all about the MiFi program or the MIFI, essentially where Apple certifies hardware that uses the Lightning port. Like this is Apple's way of taking control of the audio output again.
Right.
So he's like, that's what it is. And he's like, that's just how it is. He says, number 2, wireless headphones and speakers are fine, not great. He goes, yeah, I agree. He goes, but the rumor is that the iPhone will ship with a wired Lightning earbuds. Okay.
Yeah.
And then number 3, dongles are stupid, especially when they require other dongles. He goes, yeah, external floppy drives were lame too.
Yeah.
Kill those. He says, ditching the deeply established hardware standard will disproportionately impact accessibility. He goes, yep. Apple's the company that brought us the 30-pin and Lightning ports. And iPhones, iPods, and iPads never used USB ports. He's like, that's just not high on Apple's list to do something that's open and for everybody and like USB. It's like, if that was the case, you would see the micro USB ports on iPhones, which goes, it's the same argument for number 5 about making Android and iPhone headphones incompatible is so incredibly arrogant and stupid. It's not, he's like, Apple doesn't care about Android. That's not an argument.
Right.
And then he says, finally, again, no one is asking for this. And he goes, if you remember, no one asked for the iMac to remove the floppy drive or switch from ADB ports to USB, which at the time PCs were not shipping with USB either. And so he's like, so there weren't very many peripherals out there. So there was also a huge outcry when the iPhone 5 dumped the proprietary but ubiquitous 30-pin port and the proprietary all-new Lightning port. MacBook fans are still, MacBook Air fans are still complaining about the new MacBook solitary USB-C port. It's like, so like that's how this works. And they push the bounds and they do things a little bit sooner than everybody else wants. He goes, so they're going to make it a little bit thinner, which, by the way, I loved he goes, thinness is not the argument for it, which I thought was interesting. He makes some good points. He said it's not about thinness. He goes, the iPhone 6 is the thinnest iPhone to date at 6.9. However, the iPod Touch has a headphone jack and is 6.1. The iPod Nano was 5.4. So he's like, so it's not about thinness. Like, yeah, they can make it a lot thinner with the headphone jack still there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, and honestly, I think I think the reason for it is the exact reason why everybody thinks it's brilliant. It's because it's analog. Like that's that everything that they do is moving away from analog. And so I looked into it. They call it the analog hole, is if you want to Google it, or the analog loophole. And it's the idea that it is possible to, if you're trying to do copyright protection, it's pretty easy to have what they, a handshake, where basically in order for the screen to display a video, the screen has to have like all the different, like it has to be able to tell the computer, oh, I'm a safe screen. I'm not a recording device. And therefore you can't, it's hard to just record things directly. Whereas if it's an analog output, then somebody can get a very high quality analog recording equipment and just plug it into the analog port. There's no handshake. The phone can't tell the difference between a recording device and a headphone device. And so it's easier to copy things through that transition. But it has the inherent problem of being not a perfect copy. It's still a digital to analog conversion, which is lossy, period. And even if it's minimally lossy. And I think that ultimately is the thing that bugs Apple and bugs people about the headphone jack in general, is that it's ultimately lossy. And you lose definition, you lose information when you do that. And so much of the digital age is about having perfect replicatable information passing from thing to thing. And as an end user, you may not appreciate in a real way why that's important. But like as an engineer, that is insanely important. That's one of your top priorities, is making sure that the data is trustable, reliable, and copied time and time again perfectly all the time. There's huge areas of study devoted to making sure that happens, how to do it right. And yeah, it has other benefits for different people. Some people, it means that it's easier to do digital output and have, and have every digital, high, I don't know. It's not, as a consumer, you don't necessarily see why that's a big deal, especially because, and this is the thing to remember, what they're really doing is they're taking the audio jack hardware, not just the plug, but the digital to analog converter out of the iPhone. And what that really means for most people is that when you take that out of the iPhone, all of a sudden that gives the end user all sorts of flexibility about what sort of digital analog converter they want. That might be something that's just built into the headphones, where the headphones have a little plug at the end that plugs in the iPhone and it works. There's no dongles or whatever. But that might be a super high-end dongle that plugs into an analog, an analog jack. But what they're doing ultimately for the consumer, and why so many companies are looking at this as the next step to go, is because it's just treats it as data still, and it continues to move on. And there are long ways down advantages to this. And so one example of this is a company, it's a Kickstarter that I stumbled across. I thought kind of looks cool, but they're super expensive, so I wouldn't get it. But it is called the baselet. It's kind of like, it's a play on the bracelet word. Basically, it looks like a little watch without a screen. You strap it to your arm, and it gives a very visceral feeling of bass. So normally we think of bass as something you hear, but have you ever gone to a big dance club, James?
Oh yeah, all the time.
All the time. So one of the things that you get from like really super high end, really loud systems is that it's the whole drop the bass in dubstep. What that's about, especially when you're at the
Eleanor
club.
loves that, by the way.
I don't blame her. It's
we went
awesome.
to a wedding where they had a song with a big bass. She was all in on it.
That's great. And one of the big reasons for that is because it's not about hearing it so much as feeling it. And they point out the fact that honestly, a lot of people, they only really start to like dubstep and house music at all once they actually go and see it, because you get that visceral feeling of, oh, this is what the music's designed to do, is to impact me physically. And so this race bracelet is trying to simulate that on a portable mechanism. So you plug in, basically how it works is you plug in into the headphone jack, you plug a dongle that wirelessly communicates to the bracelet. Then you plug your headphones into the dongle. So the normal like mids and high range stuff goes to your ears that you can hear. And then the bass goes to your bracelet, to your wrist. So it's kind of a cool idea. And the reason why I bring this up is because this is exactly the sort of thing we're talking about doing. And the biggest problem that they actually are going to run into is that they have to add extra software and hardware into that little dongle so that they can take the analog signal, turn it into a digital signal, so they can send that digital signal to the bracelet and then turn it back into an analog, or past the analog system probably, along to the headphones. And the end result is a bunch of stuff that shouldn't be needed. Whereas if this all just plugged into the iPhone and there was one audio output where it was like Bluetooth and this thing, or the digital analog conversion was done right there, they could majorly reduce the cost of the hardware overall. And those sorts of extra advantages and doodads and add-ons are things that people want and they look forward to and are cool. And that's an advantage of having to not have an analog output, to just have the pure digital, so you can keep everything digital and keep all the timing sequences the same. And I don't know, to me this feels like the sort of thing that's like it's got a little bit of a long-term consumer advantage to it, but I really don't get the feeling that this is some horrible thing that they're doing to consumers, especially since I guarantee you that 2 weeks after this comes out, you're going to be able to buy on Amazon for $3 a little thing that like snaps onto you plug in your regular headphones, you click it on, and it snaps onto the headphone like jack, so it's locked in there, and it's got a little iPhone adapter on it, and it'll be super cheap, and that's all you'll need to be able to use all of your old headphones. Guarantee that. And it just will be one of those things where you got really cool, super high-end headphones that you still want to use. You don't want to get rid of your $300, $400 Beats headphones. Don't worry about it. They'll be a good solution for you. And I think I agree with John Gruber. And what I really like about it is that the Chinese companies are like, they see this coming, and they're like, yeah, we're going to get on it too. And especially for the Android, where it's all USB-C on the phones now. So it's going to be super standardized across all your different devices. And I honestly think that's the one thing that concerns me, is that if they're going with USB-C on all of their computers, and they're going to get rid of headphone jacks on their computers, like the MacBook, like the MacBook, where it'll just be the one USB-C. Mm-hmm. I do feel like, okay, so I'm going to have 2 different headphones for that. That's the one piece of the puzzle that I'm like, I'm curious about, and I'm not predicting that the iPhone 7 is going to have a USB-C port. But
what if the new MacBooks have a Lightning connector on them?
That could make sense. It feels like the wrong direction. That feels like entirely the wrong direction. But
I don't know.
It makes more sense from an Apple perspective than putting a USB-C on the new iPhone. But that being said, USB-C was a standard that was developed by Apple that the Lightning port was built on first. They built the Lightning port while developing the USB-C standard. They secretly told the USB committee about it. USB committee ratified it. So it's a very Apple-centric technology, and it makes a lot of sense for them to do that. But like I said, that'd be nuts. People would, and I can't work through the logic of whether they do that or not, especially because there's this part of me that wants them to. I'm like, that'd be really cool if we could finally get over to just the USB-C standard and have everybody on the same standard plug. But it's interesting stuff, James. Thank you for bringing us that.
No problem.
Speaking of interesting,
a lot more about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, September probably.
Yeah.
Yes. So Elon Musk, owner and operator of the Tesla motor.
SpaceX.
SpaceX, yes. that one. He told his investors that he has offered to buy Solar City.
Doesn't he like already have some money in it?
Yeah, he was like a co-founder of
Okay.
it. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the relationship is, to be totally honest. If I was better at this job, I probably would have thought about that and looked into it. But yeah, co-founder. No. Elon Musk announced that Tesla, a company he co-founded and currently runs, was offering to buy Solar City, another company he founded, where he is currently chairman of the board. So yeah, he's kind of a big deal with Solar City. Like he's involved.
Yeah, I knew he put some money into it or something.
Right. Chairman of the board is a pretty big deal. So the idea here is that so Tesla obviously has the electric cars, and they've also announced the electric backup power things for your houses. So you put a big old battery pack in your house, then you could charge it during the
power
day.
wall.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, prices are cheap, and then you can use it at night when power prices are expensive, or vice versa. I can't remember. The power wall, yeah. So they're kind of talking about how he's basically. This is a weird decision. This is like an interesting thing. I'm pretty excited about it because, on one hand, this totally makes sense in terms of what Tesla is all about, where it's about consuming electric power, especially the power wall and the car. And Solar City is all about producing electricity from the sun or renewable sources. And so this company that's very much into the whole using and producing electricity in a sustainable way for the world, yeah, makes a lot of sense. And especially if they are able to put together packages where it's like you can get the solar powered, package for your solar powered life package for your house, where you pay a bunch of money, they install a bunch of solar panels, they install one of these power bricks, and it charges all day while you're at work. You get home, you park your Tesla, you plug your Tesla into your house, and then the sun that you collected all day charges your car at night. And sounds like a pretty compelling little architecture that they build, where they're supplying all pieces of the puzzle. There's been some really exciting stuff going on with solar power lately too that makes this purchase make even more sense. Or we're starting to get to a tipping point where solar panel is getting pretty price competitive with oil, and efficiencies in solar cells efficiencies in solar cells continue to go up year after year after year. And as we continue to watch this continuing march of efficiency, you're starting to get these solar cells that if you buy new, you charge like crazy. It's awesome. And not to mention the fact that there's all sorts of lab tests and different things that are in the process of becoming marketable and going into production at all different stages that should be getting people really excited about solar cells, because there's a lot of upside there in the near and distant future in both. So it's one of those things where it's like there's this view that there's a lot of upside to this. The downside to it is that it's still ridiculously expensive to build solar cells into your house. One of Solar City's biggest innovations was how they sell the solar cells.
Totally.
Basically, you want to go into that? I know you've described it before.
Well, it's just it's a brilliant model where you, whatever your energy costs are today, they lock it in because that's what you will now pay in perpetuity. And then essentially you probably have some sort of down payment, but you pay them a monthly fee equivalent to your energy cost. And they're like, all right, cool, you're done. And so you essentially are paying for the system over, I don't remember how many years. It's like a long time. It's like 7 years or something, like 9 years. It's a long time. And so the idea is your electricity cost is now known. They make money when, obviously you paying them and it's free to collect the energy. And so that's how they make it back. And then if you don't use it, they can sell it back to the grid, which over time, as electrical costs go up, they will also be making money doing that. So it's a pretty cool little system. They also take care of they take care of the installation and maintenance for that time period.
And then at the end of the 7 or 9 years or whatever it is, basically, then you own it, and you get to and you get all the benefits of having this power system involved. So effectively, it's sort of like you take on a loan where the monthly payments are equivalent to your electrical payments presently. So yay, we're good.
Yeah. So if you expect them to be going up over time, like this is a good thing to do.
Right.
Yeah, no, Solar City is pretty sweet.
Right. And that being said, they haven't been taking off like Tesla. They're still they've been limited by solar efficiencies and stuff because it doesn't work on every house, and it's still expensive to do. There's still some financial risk that people look at this, and they're especially saying that Solar City is going to need a lot of money to continue to run, and they're looking at profitability, like big time profitability. They're like, yeah, we got 20 years before we get there, which is not where Tesla's at. Tesla's going to be selling hundreds of thousands of cars in the next couple of years. So it's, and as Tesla is taking these huge risks with the cars, or they're selling tons of cars, they're expanding manufacturing really quickly, they're introducing the low price car, but they have expectations built up. Solar City's payoff is viewed as similar to where Tesla was, like 5 or 6 years ago, where we got a working model. There's definitely potential here. All the technology is going in the right direction, but if we run out of money, we're gonna have a real big problem. And so the big question is, should Tesla be taking on the financial responsibility of Solar City at a time when they're kind of they're still in a somewhat precarious position financially? But the upside to it is awesome, and from a financial perspective, and ultimately, Elon Musk is a crazy guy trying to save humanity from himself, so he doesn't actually care about those things.
So that's true. So Jesse and I are buying a house.
Nice.
Officially next week, and we're pretty certain it's going to need a new roof sooner rather than later. And so that's when I'm like, because when you install a new roof, like that's the time to put on the solar panels,
right?
And because obviously if your roof is bad, then you have to tear off the solar panels and it's not good. So I'm kind of like, oh man, that would be awesome.
It would be awesome
to do that and be part of the future.
Yeah.
It's been kind of fun, like thinking about with a new house going like, all right, what are all of the like smart gadgets that I can add to it? It has a garage door with a garage door opener. So I'm like, all right, how do I hook this up to my phone?
Raspberry Pi.
Rocketron. Oh my gosh. Suckers. Everything I've read though, it's still like the one that I want to go with, because you finally get sick and tired of like, seriously, come on, what other options are there? And it's like, honestly, there's like maybe one other option, and they've publicly stated like, no, we have our own system. We're not going to play nice with either Android or iOS systems.
That's annoying.
It's like, yeah, exactly. Well, no.
Yeah, but no. So you know what else you can do? This is a really cool gadget you can add to your house that like I just was thinking about this. Like they're really awesome. What?
Are they lights?
No, they're not lights. It's kind of light. It's like a panel of light that you can independently change like thousands of pixels at a time. And you can do things like watch movies and TV shows on them. And you can play video games on them.
Yeah.
I call them televisions.
Well, Jesse's sitting near me, so I got to be careful on how I say this. But so we're moving into a new situation where my computer, what we're doing this podcast in, will now be in a room, not in the living room.
Oh, okay.
So it should mean no more trains, no more crazy girl crying and yelling, and things like that. So, but that means it's going to be in this room, and we have a nice big living room, and there's like a mantle area already there. So I'm like, what are we doing with that?
Yeah, because when you watch movies, you watch it on this TV or on your computer, right?
Yeah, though if I'm honest, recently what we've been doing is using Jesse's iPad, the iPad Pro, awesome, 12.9. Yeah, and it's just like it's a foot away from the couch.
Nice.
So that may also continue to be the solution.
I know I keep throwing this out there, James, but
you can't play video games on an iPad. That's the problem.
You know what you can play video games on and can create a screen as big as a movie theater?
Projector?
Virtual reality.
Virtual reality.
Yeah, just saying.
Oh, that would be sweet. Maybe that's what I'll do.
That's what I'm saying, man. Get the what's it called? HTC Vive.
Wait. So if I assuming we're done with solo shit here. So if I let's say I own a Wii,
yeah,
64 and an NES because I'm clearly in that camp. Could I play those on virtual reality?
No, but you should be able. No, not yet. But that's so easy because it's an analog video output. So what you would need is an analog video input on the computer, and then you would just play it on a screen. Into that
once, and I think all the reviews I read said there's a slight lag, which in video gaming is death.
Yeah, well, they're getting a lot better because of all the because all the recording stuff for like and like Twitch streaming. They've done huge amounts of work to get there to improve that, so there's very little lag.
I didn't even think of that. Okay,
but that's an interesting idea because that's got to be coming. That's got to be coming.
I would love it. It doesn't have to be fancy. I just want to play Super Mario Bros. On a regular screen.
Yeah,
which
virtual reality.
It's gonna be weird anyways because I'm gonna get a TV that's like HDMI only.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get get converters.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So anyways, cool.
Yeah, where you take an analog signal and you make it digital. People who want to stick with just analog output are crazy. They're crazy.
Yeah, what's wrong with them?
They're just wrong. That's not how the other way it's going. Exactly. Jeez. What was I going to say? Yeah, okay. Next story. I like this one. So, do you use Uber much? You used Uber before, right? Or have you not?
I have never used it.
Oh my gosh. You've got to get out of your small town, James.
Well,
come to the big city.
The town is not the problem. Yeah, I've
Is it the fact that you own a car? Is that your problem?
Travel I think is the issue.
Yeah, so Uber's pretty awesome. Basics of how it works is you open up the app, you say, I want to go here. It tells the driver, this person wants to go here. The driver accepts it and goes. But one of the big complaints about Uber has been how their pricing works, where basically what they'll do is like there's a standard price, and it depends on where you are and where you're going and what time of the day it is. But it's like if you're in Vegas, there is how long it takes to get there and the distance you're going. If it's broken down that way. And depending on locations and stuff, those numbers change. But it works a lot like a taxi. It is a function of how long it takes and how far you're going. But they have an extra thing where they try to balance their load using economics, where they don't always, because they don't hire drivers have to just go out and decide to do it. They want to incentivize drivers to do it when nobody else wants to do it. And they want to
this is brilliant.
Exactly. They want to decentivize riders who at times of high demand. So a great example is 2:05 a.m. on a Friday night / Saturday morning. Bars are closed. Okay. Everybody wants to go home, but it's really late and nobody wants to be driving. So what they do is they raise the price during that period called surge pricing. So they jack the price up a lot until people stop trying to get rides, and it incentivizes drivers to be driving at that time of night because they're going to make a bunch of money. And so long and short of it, it's surge pricing. That's how it works. But people hate it.
That sounds awesome.
It does, but people hate it for reasons that are, and the reason for it, and I think Uber has actually kind of nailed this one.
Like the riders hate it, or the drivers hate it?
No, the drivers love it.
Okay.
The riders, the guys that are getting in the car, hate it, and I've fallen victim to this, where it's like you'll get to the 1.5, and you'll be like, oh, geez, that's expensive. Maybe I'll give it 5 minutes and see if it goes down. And then it goes to the 2.5, and you're like, you just get this like sickening feeling in your stomach. It's like, and the worst part about it is it's a $10 drive. You should have just paid $15, but now you're going to pay $25. And it's like, especially if you were drinking out late in San Francisco, which has happened to me before, and you just spent $10 on a 12-ounce beer, and you're like, you're getting picky about that last $5 at the end of the night. It's ridiculous. And so you're sitting there, and it's just, but for whatever reason, that multiplication thing is really bothersome. And so what they're doing is they're going to try to change it up, where instead of telling you what the multiplier is, they're going to tell you what the total cost is. Just that's it. So, yeah.
Wait, so surge pricing is still there?
Yeah, it totally is. They're
okay.
just not going to tell you what the multiplier is. They're just going to tell you how expensive it is to get from where you are to where you want to go, period.
It's weird they told you the multiplier earlier.
I know. It's such an engineer like solution to the problem of like, because what it is because the engineer is sitting there going, well, I want to know the ratio. What's the ratio of costs? Because just giving me the cost doesn't allow me to visualize the ratio of how much I'm paying very easily, and which in retrospect, that's like the last thing we want to show our customers, because we want them to be all right with paying higher prices. We don't want them to be upset. We want to get to the price point that's uncomfortable for them. But if we go just a little bit below that, all of a sudden they're happy again. And they don't really see what the ratio is. They don't know how much more they're paying. And as an engineer, I will do the math, and it will continue to bother me for the rest of my life. But most people don't think about it that way. And that was a really super prejudiced thing to say. I feel like we're going to have people that are listening that are like, I'm not an engineer and I can do the math and it bugs me. But like, it's not, most people, the majority of people aren't the sort of people who are going to be sitting there and thinking, wow, how much more expensive is this per unit, per mile, per ride, whatever. So yeah, it's an interesting move by Uber, and I think it'll work out. And I actually think it will have the same effect, and yet users will be happier about the experience.
I would still give the multiplier to drivers.
Oh yeah,
because I think it gives you the reverse, which is what you want.
Right.
Like, dude, you'll be making 1.5 times your normal rate. This is awesome.
Right.
Which, by the way, there was some leaked data that was talking about how much Uber drivers make. Pretty interesting. BuzzFeed kind of picked it up and dug into it.
Yeah.
They're a legitimate news source now. And
Weird.
I wish I was saying that satirically. Anyways, they're for reals. So Uber, it kind of falls into the same category of technically true, but is this what you would show?
Yeah.
So when you are a driver, they tell you essentially, like, how do I want to say it? Like, when Uber's trying to entice you to become a driver, they tell you how much you will make in fares or fees. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what an example of that. Okay. So we're talking about that $10 trip that, surge prices up to 1.5, right?
I like it.
It's like, they would tell you, dude, you're going to make $15 on this trip.
Ooh.
And it's like, yes, technically true, but you have to subtract out Uber's cut and your gas and insurance and whatever other expenses you have. And so they're like, so as a result of them pitching it that way, everyone's kind of like, really, can you be making that much? And they're like, well, of course the answer is no, but the costs change no matter where, all throughout the US. So we just don't make a guess. We stick with the number that happens to be bigger, which, like, whatever. But also doesn't subtract that any cost because we just don't know what any of them are. We stick with the known numbers, which I'm like, okay, you do know what your cut is. You could have taken that number out.
Right. Yeah.
But, whatever. So because of some data that was leaked, they were able to do some math, they being BuzzFeed. And what they found is that in the Denver market, drivers earn approximately $13.17 per hour after expenses.
Okay.
In Houston, it's $10.75, and in Detroit, it's $8.77.
Huh.
Which, by the way, is below the minimum wage there. Which, there's a part of me that's like, so this is not life changing if you're trying to do it full time. Like you're
Right.
barely scraping by. Which I thought it was interesting that they profiled a couple people, and one of them, whose name is Steve Rogers. Yeah, I'm not kidding. He is 61, and he's been on it for about a year. And what happened? He said he barely earns. Yeah, so he's, like I said, he's making an example of the 877, and minimum wage is 850. So he's barely making it more, which he started out as a like doing it part time, and then his job kind of got a little iffy, and then he became full time.
Yeah.
Essentially. And and the other interesting part is if he worked at Walmart, it would be $10 an hour. Not the 850. But right. He's on his own. He gets to set his own hours. He gets to do his thing. And he has the freedom to drive. It's amazing. So it's one of those where you probably don't want to make a career out of being an Uber driver, but geez, if you're unemployed and need to make some money quick,
yeah,
not a bad way to go.
I've mentioned that my company is slow right now, and as an engineer, it hasn't been terrible for me, but for some of the guys in the company, it has been. And early on they supplemented a lot of their income with Uber because they could just do it during the day whenever. Most of my Uber drivers, you talk to them, they're all somebody trying to be somebody else. It reminds me, especially in the Bay Area, but it all remind me of waiters and waitresses in LA, where everybody's everybody's an aspiring actor trying to get noticed. Whereas I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to a car and they ask, "What do you do?" I do semiconductor work, and how long you've been an Uber driver? Well, I've been an Uber driver for this thing, but this is my main gig right now. I'm working on this app with such, or I'm going to be getting this job. And it's amazing, especially in the Bay Area, how many future billionaires are driving you around in their car for Uber, which I think is really cool. I super respect it, and it's crossed my mind before. My car's a little bit dunky to work for Uber, but because they have standards, it turns out.
Really?
Actually, I love my car. It's just old, and so whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing that they've got going on right now, and it's definitely not a big moneymaker. I do think it'll be interesting to see if you ever if it becomes a tipping point for Uber where it becomes advantageous they've grown big enough, they have enough of a monopoly where what they really want to do is they don't care about the customer so much as anymore, but they want to make sure that their drivers are really, really well satisfied. And so they start increasing the pay to drivers. I could see a world where that happens at some point. But so the price for the user goes up, but the drivers make more. Interesting. I think speaking of things being done for consumers, Apple they released their iOS 10 developer preview after last week, and people were looking into it, and they did something that they had never done before, which was they left all the code for the kernel unencrypted. Which, if you don't have any idea what any of that means, let me try to re-explain really quickly. Basically, what happens is when your computer, everybody knows you've got your Windows or OS X, right? If you're on your computer, that's your main operating system. Well, the very first thing that happens when you turn on your computer is it's actually a smaller operating system is the easiest way to describe it, but it's just the basic, corest things. It doesn't have any graphics. It doesn't have any applications. It doesn't do anything. All it does is it gets loaded in the CPU, and then its job from there is to start loading the rest of the operating system, and the rest of the operating system loads the rest of all your software in that process. So it's like the core thing, aka the kernel. And
the seed, if you will.
Exactly. And so why this is a big deal is Apple has very aggressively and stopped people from trying to break into their operating system and unlock the phone. If you remember from years past, the whole jailbreaking phenomenon.
Oh yeah.
And one of the ways that they made jailbreaking more difficult was by encrypting the kernel and keeping people from being able to get in there easily without a large research team to decrypt everything first. And they came out and said, somebody asked them, hey, did you do this on purpose? Because this seems like something you wouldn't do on purpose. And they responded back and they were like, well, honestly, from a security perspective, whether it's encrypted or not doesn't matter. It's the same theory of why is Linux unhackable? It's because everybody knows what the code is. It's so everybody can kind of, if the code is stable and secure inherently, even if you know how it works, you can't necessarily break into it. Actually, it becomes harder the more people know oftentimes. And they said, look, it's safe, it's secure. We're not worried about it being secure or not. So let everybody know what it's in, but it does increase the efficiency of how our operating system works a lot. And MIT was the one writing this article, and they were like, yeah, we have no idea what they could possibly be talking about, which I was like, So the theory is that just like with Linux, when code is open and anybody can look at it, there's so many eyes looking for bugs and vulnerabilities that those bugs and vulnerabilities will get turned up a lot quicker. And Apple, just like every tech company, has a bounty program. So if you tell them of a bug, they'll pay you for it. And so now the FBI and the theory is that the FBI has been using and the CIA have been using bugs that they know about that they haven't reported to Apple in order to break open iPhones. And this is Apple's way of basically crowdsourcing, closing those loopholes. Let everybody look at it, let everybody find the bugs, and the loopholes, close them, and then the FBI is and the CIA are out in the dark. That's the theory.
This is quite the chess match.
Exactly. So for whatever reason, this is happening, and it's fascinating to watch. And so security people who are concerned about security are actually really excited about this because, it just increases the number of eyes of people looking for bugs, which is that is an idea that is so counterintuitive to me that the more people looking at your code, the harder it is to break it. But that's how it works. So it's kind of cool.
Speaking of security, did you know that Zuckerberg covers up his laptop camera?
I heard about this week. I didn't listen to a lot of news, but as I was kind of catching up last couple of days, I've heard this.
Which I noted because my new boss at HP, she covers up her camera as well. I'm kind of like, all right, the tin hat crowd.
Right.
But they're saying for people apparently there is a way to use it to snoop on people and to turn it on and see what they're doing and get information from them, I guess.
Yeah.
And they say for people like Zuckerberg, that actually can make it, that's important.
Right.
Like for you and me, maybe not as important.
Right.
But for his stuff, yeah, it is.
Well, when you and I are spitballing ideas and accidentally turn up a gem, like giving the top 5 of your top 10, your top 6 list, outright, I do it live and nobody seems to steal my ideas. But if he was just spitballing with friends and somebody was listening on there, he's got enough money to actually, or, influence and power to actually make stuff happen. And so it's much more important for somebody else to not get the jump on them. He's much more cautious about who knows what when it comes to their ideas and strategies.
The other guy, James Comey, the director of the FBI,
James Comey.
Comey?
Yeah, Comey.
Comey. All right. Director of FBI. He told some students in April that he also puts tape over his computer's webcam.
Oh, heck yeah.
But it's for a surprisingly simple reason. He says, quote, "I saw something in the news, so I copied it." Because I put a piece of tape. I have obviously a laptop, a personal laptop. I put a piece of tape over the camera because I saw somebody smarter than I am had a piece of tape over their camera.
You know what? That strikes me as the sort of thing that somebody who knows a really dirty secret would say, because it's such a great answer that kind of it answers all the questions without leaving you any concerns. It's not, well, the CIA director who I'm friends with told me that they know China's doing that and that we need to start doing that in order to protect ourselves. Or even more even more worrying, they found out the CIA was doing it to the FBI, and the FBI is doing that in response. And they're like, check this out, CIA, can't stoop on us now. Like, that's, to me, that is almost certainly, especially because, like, for me, I remember years ago, it must have been years ago, maybe, like, especially around the time of the Snowden leaks, they talked about what the CIA was doing. Like, we know the CIA has the tech to be able to turn on webcams without turning on the LED that alerts you that the webcam is on, so they can spy on people. They have that technology. And you're trying to tell me the director of the FBI, and if you know anything about Comey's background, like, he basically, that's the answer you give when you really don't want to get the director of your competitive agency in trouble. Competitive / cooperative.
Yeah.
And
fair enough.
Which is funny. I wonder how much of Zuckerberg doing that is him worried about foreign governments versus tech competitors versus his own government.
Versus he doesn't need it as a super simple solution.
Yeah, it's just protection.
Wow.
I agree with you. That's the obvious lowest common denominator of an answer, but I would be curious just to get his response to that question. What do you worry about most? Do you worry about China trying to get the inner scoop? Do you worry about Google trying to get the inner scoop? Or do you worry about, or not even Google, but maybe a more nefarious tech competitor?
I was talking to a guy. He's not in the U.S., or he's not a U.S. citizen, I should say. He's abroad. And he also had his laptop taped over his camera. And I asked him, I was like, why do you have that? He's like, so people can't spy on me. And I was kind of like, no, but like, seriously, like, why? Like, do you actually think people are trying to spy on you? He goes, yeah, I do. And now they can't. And like, I don't think he was messing with me. He's not that kind of guy.
Well,
pretty serious. And I was like, wow. Okay.
So this is the question. Does this mean that you won't be taping your camera? Won't be
being that you and I do this weekly, probably not.
Yeah.
No. You know, it's like we've talked about before. If someone takes one of our awesome ideas, like, that's sweet. If we get sued for copying somebody, like, that's a win. You know, once that happens, all right, maybe I'll change my tune. But until then, I'm not overly worried about it.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest.
Then I got to follow up.
So
go, be totally honest.
I'm kind of under the assumption that I am being spied on.
There you go.
And we've talked about this before, in like how we treat Facebook or just online stuff in general. Anything online isn't private, period. It doesn't matter if you've got password protection and you're paying extra money. No, it's not private. And you need to think about everything you put on the internet as it's not private. Your bank account numbers, your healthcare information, your social security, that's not private. Everybody and anybody can know that. And when you like think about the internet in that terms, you start to self-censor in order to protect yourself and live in such a way that you don't have to worry about the consequences of that sort of thing, because you just self-censor. Now, is it super healthy to self-censor like that all the time? I don't think so. is it okay when you're sitting in front of your computer to remember that, yeah, if anybody were to look in here, I might have to be able to deal with the consequences of this in some capacity. And do you live your life differently with it when it's like that? Yeah, I think you do. Which might be an overly simplistic, and people are going to be screaming at their computers, screaming like it's not that simple, because things that are out of context, things that are easy to explain but out of context, can seem way worse. And so, like, there are dangers beyond that. But I'm like, yeah, but there are dangers beyond that, just like daily life. There has to be some level. I don't know. It's super complicated, and it's I don't even know why, but I think it's the feeling of I've got my PlayStation camera right there, which is two different cameras. I've got my webcam right there. I have I got an iPhone sitting here, an iPod Touch sitting here, my actual iPhone sitting there, my iPod sitting somewhere else. I got a computer there. I got so many cameras everywhere. It's like, it would be, to start to turn off one camera would be just like, no, I just have to remember that in my room I'm under surveillance if anybody were so inclined, period. And just live your life that way.
That's fair. I'm watching a TV show, Continuum.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it? Have you watched it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
It's pretty good. It's the premise of it is the year's like 1970 or 2077. It's the future.
All right.
And this cop, she goes back in time to present day, along with some terrorists, and their whole goal is to change history.
Okay.
And, attack when people aren't ready, type of thing. And they've got some future tech. She's got some future tech. So it's kind of fun from just the technology standpoint.
Gotcha.
And so it's good. Highly recommend it. But they also explore this idea of privacy and control through that. And so in the future world, it's like, everything's recorded and like actively done. So, it is.
Right.
And so the idea is whenever a crime is committed, it's like, well, all the information is instantly accessible. It's just there.
Right.
And the idea being, if everyone is being recorded and they all know it, they will behave. It's kind of the premise. And so it's her dealing with today where that's not true, and trying to figure out how to. She joins up with the local police department and, is trying to stop the terrorists. And she herself has augmented chips inside of her that allows her to know a lot more and access a lot more information just during conversations. Like, think Terminator.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, so she knows stuff, and they're like, well, how do you know that? She's like, oh, well, I read them. And they're like, well, that's great for you.
Yeah.
It means nothing right now. And whereas in the future, like that's legit, to go, oh, his heart rate is elevated. He's nervous. He's clearly lying.
Interesting.
And in the future, they're like, you're lying. You're now in trouble.
Right.
Present day, they're like, whoa, what are you talking about? So it's an interesting show. It really explores a lot of what would a society like that look like, where we've accepted the fact that, we have webcams everywhere and they're always on. And so I just got to deal with
Netflix Passenger?
What?
Is this Netflix?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
It's good, dude. Check it out.
Let's see. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious. Mr. Robot's the other one that I'm like, I gotta get into this. Everybody loves it, and it's all about hacking and this sort of stuff. So I don't know. Yeah. It's curious. I do like to get. It's interesting when they talk about like different cultures, especially cultures like in I guess Russia, where you're still coming out of like the post
in the future.
Yeah, your post hyper surveillance societies. Are weird and super defensive for this exact reason. Everybody's self-censored all the time because the authorities are out looking for you to be doing something wrong. So it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's life. deal with it. So the last thing I want to talk about is the government not messing things up, but seeming to making things more cool. So the FAA, the Federal Aviation's Administration, has decided they've announced new rules. Part 107, as it's being called. Basically, up to this point, in order to legally fly a drone for commercial purposes, like let's say you want to put a camera on a drone and shoot a TV commercial.
Building. Oh, yeah, that too.
Or like, yeah, shoot building. Exactly. You needed a pilot's license, which is a little excessive in some people's opinions, especially since at this point, these drones do so much of the work for you. It doesn't require all the sophistication of a pilot license. So what they've said is a new set of rules, and this new set of rules will be governing the use of drones by commercial operators. Before today, any for-profit entity flying a drone, from real estate agents to farmers to photographers, have to have a pilot's license. Legally, I emphasize, because I know quite a few people who are commercial operators.
Well, it's funny. I was reading a forum about this guy, might have been on Reddit, where he was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about this new career opportunity. I got this drone. I usually take pictures, or no, he takes photos or something." Yeah. And was thinking about using drones to take photos and specifically target the real estate market. And he's like, I think I can charge a pretty, I think I can charge a decent amount and make some money because there's whatever. And essentially a bunch of people were like, can't do it. It's illegal unless you have a pilot's license, which since you're like 14, I don't think you do. Because that's how old the kid was. And so they're like, DOA, don't even waste your time on it. But this would obviously change those responses.
That would change those responses, thankfully, because the truth of the matter is that tons of people are doing it this way already, and the FAA knows it. So instead of cracking down and enforcing a ridiculous rule, instead the updated regulatory framework replaces that license with a knowledge test and certificate specific to flying a drone. Yeah, allowing companies a much cheaper, faster, and simpler path to get in the air. And I don't know this to be true, but I'm envisioning something like the gun safety test that you have to take before you get a gun, or before you get a hunting license in most states, where it's, it's a couple of questions. You got to go through it and basically say, yeah, I know how to not kill people. Or more importantly, I'm aware of the consequences of doing this inappropriately, right? A pilot's license is a proof that you know how to fly a plane. Whereas a lot of these safety test things, they're like basic safety, super basic safety, and just a general awareness that if you mess up, you're responsible. And so, get the appropriate training. But yeah, companies like DJI are coming out and saying, yeah, this is a major development for the future of drones in America. It means that business and farmers and government agencies and academic researchers can put drones to work without having to get an airplane's pilot license or follow the onerous rules. Those are pretty high barriers to entry. Part 107 is a vote of confidence from the FAA that drones can be safely integrated into the national airspace, and that a wider operation of drones for all sorts of non-recreational uses will bring real benefits to America, which is absolutely true. And Amazon is still pretty disappointed by this ruling, because what it is basically the downside to this is it's the right progress. We're going in the right direction, but the FAA has effectively said, if you want to use drones in the national airspace without for commercial reasons or otherwise, you still need an operator present. You can't have autonomous drones picking stuff up from.
Well, so if you remember correctly, you can have someone. You just have to have a responsible party. They don't have to fly the drone. So you could have someone who's not licensed flying under the supervision of someone who is licensed, which I realize is not the same as autonomous, but there's some groundwork being laid there already.
Yeah, they're getting. We'll get there eventually.
It's gonna happen. Yeah. I wouldn't expect them to just be like carte blanche. All right, autonomous, we're all good.
Yeah, this is probably good, since none of these things are particularly light, and they all have really fast spinning, propellers on them, and they can't necessarily kill you by falling out of the sky, but they're not necessarily not going to kill you by falling out of the sky. So especially because all of this regards registered drones, which have to be under a certain or are above a certain weight limit. And that
55
particular,
pounds or something.
yeah, and that particular weight limit they set there because they're like everything below this, if it fell to the sky and hit you in the head, it almost certainly won't kill you. Anything above this might kill you. So yeah, a little precaution would be nice.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's interesting. It's just, making progress, moving forward. And
Yeah,
the dealing with regulations with a lot of this new stuff, whether it's automated cars or drones or whatever, is
I guarantee you Amazon's still working it.
Oh, yeah.
They're developing it. They're talking to people in the background, because if they can prove a system to the FAA, we're like, look, it's autonomous, but it's safe. We've got these precautions, blah, blah, blah. It's doing all this amazing stuff. The FAA is going to go, huh, okay, that's interesting. Let's say that the rules have to have these things that Amazon just happens to have, and then they're first and only to market.
Right. Exactly. They're testing it out in country. Amazon is presently testing it out in countries that are allowing them to.
Yeah,
they're working on it. And like you said, the nice part about doing all this is you lobby the regulators, you help write the regulations, and then you have the benefit of being the ones who are you're guaranteed that you meet all the regulatory requirements because you helped them. So yeah, it makes sense. Well, we'll see it come sooner.
Well, and what this signals to me is that the FAA is willing to play.
Right.
They're not just, oh, these things are bad, we need to shut them down any way possible. No, they're open to it. That's encouraging.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Exciting times we live in. Super thin laptops. In one of the pictures in the article, it shows the Spectre literally cutting cheese. It's that thin and sharp. It's awesome.
It's like a knife.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say it's more smashing cheese in that area and cleaving it from the other part. But yeah, sure.
Yeah, whatever. I think that's a technicality there. But yeah, because isn't a knife kind of smashing its little tiny area?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how knives work.
Well, yeah. Yes. I guess that's theoretically true because if on a microscopic level, the tip of even an incredibly sharp knife is a couple of atoms thick, and so.
Well, I think about a saw, right? There's dust afterwards, so something got crushed.
Yeah.
And broken apart.
Yeah, well, those are literally like you can think of. So if you think of a knife blade as a very thin, it's smashing a very thin line of stuff, and so you get this very small thin. Like a saw blade is a bunch of those moving along the other axis. So you're literally scraping away the material as you move through it. Because if you went into a piece of wood with a knife, you would get it. It would split and would get all gummed up it would actually become, even if you could go straight through, like you had a super
maybe
sharp
knives
knife.
Are a little different then.
Yeah. If you had like a super sharp knife and you were pushing it through the tree, at some point it would get stuck just because of the force. So saws are actually, they're cleaning it out. Yeah, I guess it's like a really, really dull knife, it's maybe the best way.
It's like a butter knife.
Yeah.
A spoon.
Yeah, right.
Because it's dull and would hurt. All right. That was, let's see, Kevin Costner, Robin Hood reference, I believe.
I think so. I believe so.
Yes. Talks about he'll dig his heart out with a spoon. It's like, a spoon?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because it's dull and would hurt a lot. Oh, that's a good reason.
Yeah, okay.
That would be Severus Snape, who, before he was Severus, who delivered that line.
That's right.
Wow, I know way too much about that.
Yeah,
particular movie.
You're getting deep. James, that wasn't a good movie.
It happens. Sweet. All right, man. I think that's all the news that really matters this week.
Yeah, I agree.
Good stuff.
I like it.
Good stuff. Thank you for dreaming with us. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for just being... I lost my train of thought there. That's cool. Don't forget, you can check out all the show notes and all the links at furlobros.com. Again, this is episode 248. And if you'd like to get the show notes sent directly to you, you can sign up right on that same page on the right-hand side. And finally, this podcast is supported by listeners just like you. and we genuinely do thank you guys for it. If you would also like to contribute, there are 4 different levels. We got fanboys, nerds, junkies, and mavens, and they each have their own different levels of rewards. So you can check out furlobros.com to find out more about that as well. This is good. This is good. I am James Furlo. My independent brother is Matthew Furlo. And so we will talk next time.